things okay. I mean, if they lose, it's a little bit David Brenty, isn't it?
Everything is.
If you lose, it's full on. Jesus, and we knew then that he was too emotional. He'd lost the run of himself completely. We were wondering, this is the last thing. We need to be in a positive frame of mind, and we're talking about being losers.
Yes. Too emotional is what would have been thrown at them.
Yeah. What a great team, though. We were up in Crossmaglen a couple of years ago and met a lot of the lads, and met Francie Bellew. I think we have the only recorded 10 seconds of Francie Bellew on the radio ever.
He did well.
Jeez, they were a tough team.
Yeah, very very memorable team. So we were chatting away. We wouldn't do an anniversary for any old All-Ireland football final win, but it's on this very day, and it's their only win, and they're such a memorable team. So all those things.
That's the thing. They're such a memorable team. You always kind of presume that they won more than they actually did. Because the names, they trip off the tongue, like the McConvilles and McGeeneys, all that kind of stuff. It's nuts.
Yeah. So they're on the way after 8 o'clock. Paul McGinley coming up this hour. And Nathan, I wasn't really talking to you in too much detail. Were you bemoaning what DeChambeau did to winged foot? Did he destroy golf as well as the field?
I think it's been a little bit over the top, the reaction. He, hits the ball as far, if not further, than the vast majority of players, but he didn't win it just because of that. In fact, if you start breaking it down statistically, he didn't drive it as far as Rory McIlroy over the 4 days. He just had a better short game and put it better, and maybe mentally prepared himself better for what his short game will be needed, because, as he said in the Wednesday, I'm going to drive it in the rough a lot, but I know I can get it up to the front edge. So he went into that with the attitude of, all right, I don't need to be in the middle of the fairway to win this, whereas you expect a lot of players did. But he's a pretty divisive figure. He's certainly moved from being sort of quirky and interesting into, as you say, is he destroying the game? But I think fair enough, analysts need to go and delve deep into what this may mean, and should they change the ball, should they look at the equipment. But I think some of the other players coming out, he's taking advantage of the system almost. And we're not talking about his bulk or anything like that. That somehow by putting on all this weight and being able to bomb it that long, he's taking advantage of something. He's not. He's looked at this, he's looked at the stats, he saw what worked. It was a big decision, because remember, he was already a very good player even before he put on the 3 stone. He was already a 7-8 time PGA Tour winner. Yeah. So he had a lot at stake if this went wrong. But he looked at the statistics. He saw what the benefits would be of adding an extra 20, 30 yards, and he's reaping the benefits of it. So yeah, I thought it ended up being quite dull, which didn't help matters as well. So you have an hour of just discussing Bryson, and having seen the brilliance, just talking him down. I think a little bit of it's been over the top.
I think it's been way over the top as well. Yeah, absolutely. Like when Westhuizen, who's the most aesthetic of players, won in 2010 at St Andrews, that was boring because he was just dominating the field, and so it's going to be boring when anyone wins that easily. But it was about strategy as much as anything, and it was about his short game. He was the 7th longest off the tee across that week. 7th. So
I have a question about the course itself. Because one of the things that they say made it boring, I saw a couple of comments on Twitter, was that after the 5 and 6 unders that were posted on the Thursday, that the USGA, you mentioned it, I think, Nathan, on Thursday, that the USGA wouldn't enjoy what they've seen so far this afternoon and would essentially turn the screw and make the course harder to play. And that, from a viewing experience, isn't regarded as the best either, because people want to see players making, not 20 under pars by the end of the weekend, but certainly be under par, making decent shots, making decent putts, and not walking around frustrated, rubbing their temples pretty much the whole round, kind of wondering how they're going to eke anything out of the course. And that, more than anything, I think had an impact on viewing pleasure at the weekend. I don't know what the golfing fraternity make of that kind of thing.
Again, I think that's what you would say after that tournament. But if you think back to 2006 at Winged Foot, it was absolute carnage, because you had 4 or 5 people collapsing over the final few holes. So that kind of golf can be intriguing. It can be hugely entertaining. But you're right, when it goes the opposite way, it didn't feel like anybody could make a run on Sunday. So those players that were 5, 6 shots back at the turn, you really didn't see that they could put together a string of birdies. They just weren't out there. And once Wolf fell away, but I was one of those who was hoping it would get really tough to see the carnage, but it just meant there was just one man standing, which, much like if you weren't Irish, Shane Lowry's 6-shot win wasn't that dramatic. There was nobody near him coming down that back 9. It was just the brilliant scenes that we saw.
I'm just thrown that Richie McCormack asked a genuine golf question. Like halfway through there, I was like, "What? Where's this going? Where's the punchline?"
I even came up with an analogy by the time I'd finished talking. It's like those kind of courses, I guess, are like they always talk about Monaco and Formula One as long as you start on pole and you don't F up somewhere along the line, you're going to win because nobody's going to overtake you. And similarly, those kind of courses seem to play the same way, whereby once you manage to put together a game that isn't going to put you haywire anywhere and there aren't many chances taken, then I guess the DeChambeau way of doing it, whether he hits long or not, if he's analytical and he plays cleverly, then he does have a hope of staying out in front.
Funny enough, I think he'll be able to go low as well. Augusta is in November. So the next two majors are the Masters. That's kind of cool thing to say, isn't it? So November, by then he plans to put on another 10 pounds of bulk and be playing with a 48-inch driver, which is about 5 inches longer than the average. So things are going to be interesting. Was Joe's astronaut friend Dave McIntyre? I'd say it doesn't take much to rile him up. It's all those protein shakes. What are you talking about? Dave McIntyre's very easygoing man. Armagh, luckiest team ever, says anonymous texter. I wouldn't have regarded them as lucky. They did win both finals by a point. You'd regard them as revolutionaries in some ways, and certainly like full of quality. I mean,
they're the sort of team that now, with time having moved on, you can fully appreciate the greatness and see why they won in All Ireland. When you, as Richie say, the names roll off the tongue, and you can go through the 15 and the character that is in that squad, and all we've learned about them since. It's no surprise they won in All Ireland.
No, I mean you'd struggle to say McGeaney, McConville, Steve McDonnell. These are lucky players who overachieved. Who would win in a fight between big old Bryson and Kieran McGeaney? I'd go pay-per-view for that one, says Sean. Well, I think it's obvious. Kieran McGeaney would murder him. He would literally commit murder.
Kieran McGeaney is one of the most fearsome men to shake hands with.
Yeah, it's rough.
Well, he has technique as well. I mean, he's grappled with Conor McGregor. I think he could manage, Bryson. So
even before that, like I remember meeting him in Coppers in an OB we did and shook hands with him afterwards, and I wasn't right for a day or two. It hurt, it hurt. That man's handshake is something else, superhuman.
And a call outside, Donegal man reckons that this Armagh team were the first to teach him about the cruelty of sport. If they hadn't beaten us in the Ulster final, it could have been us, he reckons. Well, I mean,
he was 3 that year.
Well, if Michael Murphy wasn't born, Mayo would have about 8 All Irelands by now. So
if they hadn't beaten us, it could have been us. I mean, come on.
Where does that end?
Right, let's start this news round. We're up and running. It is with thanks to Gillette. We don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters. And Richie, you're starting with, I guess, the kind of story that is going to become somewhat prevalent over the coming months.
Mm-hmm. I think it is, yeah. This evening's Carabao Cup third round tie between Leyton Orient and Tottenham was called off a couple of hours prior to kick-off. It's after a number of Orient players tested positive for COVID-19. Testing at EFL clubs is no longer mandatory, which led to a number of Premier Leagues offering pay testing prior to this week's League Cup ties. Tottenham were one of those, with Orient's testing carried out after Sunday's 2-2 draw with Mansfield. Rearranging the third round tie won't be easy, with Spurs in Europa League action in North Macedonia later this week and possibly next as well, while the Carabao Cup fourth round ties are also due to be played next week. But Orient chairman Nigel Travis feels it would be unfair for them to have to forfeit the game.
We think the appropriate action is for this league to for this game to take place. I mean, can you imagine the outrage that if in the next round, say the fourth round, Spurs and Chelsea, that one of those teams is impacted the same way if the game didn't take place? Can you imagine the outrage that you'd hear on Sky Sports and on the radio stations? This clearly is not a good policy, that someone who is doing, some organisation like Leyton Orient, following all the guidelines, doing the right thing, if we don't play the game and we're forced to forfeit it, it is a demonstration that doing the right thing doesn't work. It is an incentive for people not to test, and that will only create a bad and worse situation in the football world and probably the UK at large.
So, Rich, are we saying it's the case that we don't know if this game is forfeited or will be rescheduled?
We don't know yet. We don't know yet. I think the impulse is that it will be rescheduled. But, as I mentioned there, Tottenham's schedule and the Football League schedule as a whole is so tight that there's no room for these games essentially to be refixed anywhere. And the talk was before in different leagues and in different competitions in England, that if a game can't go ahead as the result of positive tests, then the team who can't fulfil the fixture effectively will have to forfeit. Now, they're trying their best to get this done, and they're saying they did their best by everything. But the problem that we're going to come across in the Carabao Cup, in the FA Cup later on in the season, is that EFL clubs don't have to get tested and aren't being tested on a mandatory basis. So if a Premier League club happens to be drawn against a lower league team that have come up against positive tests, then you're going to see those games being called off, or you're going to see them having to be refixed, and that's going to play havoc with the Premier League sides.
Yeah, havoc is the word. There are games going ahead. United are in action.
Yeah, two of them just underway at 7 o'clock. The two games kicked off. Padraig Amond in the Newport County side, that are at home to Watford, and West Brom are taking on Brentford. Darragh O'Shea on the Baggies bench. There's a 7:30 starts to West Ham's meeting with Hull City. Josh Cullen starts in the midfield for West Ham. Darren Randolph's in goal, and Conor Coventry's on the bench. And at 8:15, as you mentioned there, Manchester United travelling to Little Kenilworth Road to face Luton Town. Here at home, Drogheda looking to close the gap on SSE Electricity First Division leaders Bray to just the 2 points tonight. They welcome Shamrock Rovers 2 to United Park, where kick-off is at 7:45.
Meanwhile, reaction to, lockdown both here and now the UK getting its act together, so that's affecting sport, clearly.
It is. The Premier League says it's disappointed by the UK government's decision to postpone plans to allow supporters to return to matches from the start of next month. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson made the announcement today as part of plans to tackle the spread of coronavirus in that country. The Premier League says its certain fans in stadiums will be as safe, if not safer, than any other public activity currently permitted. Meanwhile, Fleetwood manager Joey Barton says today's announcement by Johnson could spell the end for some lower league clubs.
It's disappointing. I think everyone wants fans back in the stadium, albeit it has to be within the safety remit. And I've seen, obviously, I watched Marseille PSG at the weekend, and there was a crowd back in the stadium, and albeit it was a select bunch and it wasn't a full stadium, but I thought it made a big difference to the game, to the occasion, and I thought you forget almost that there was fans once in the stadium now. You're so used to playing behind closed doors. We've been at this for a while with the playoffs, that it almost would feel weird now to have fans back in, which is scary, because I think without fans we won't have football. I think certainly at our level and League Two and Conference and non-league, if we don't get fans back in the stadium, there's not going to be long that clubs can survive without the revenue, because they're absolutely vital.
Endicott is pointing out he was 7 when he learned about the cruelty of sport via Armagh. What age were you, Nathan? You 89 was a bit too early, I suspect. Was it 96? Was it watching Liam McHale being sent off? Is that when you learned about the cruelty?
Yeah. 89. There was I was 7 in 89, so there was a bit of joy and excitement. And as I often say, we went to the airport to see the team come home, so that was a highlight of the 80s for me. Yeah, 96, 97 was just pure heartbreak, and then it's sort of set in stone. That was my life. That was my formative years. My teenage years were just general heartbreak.
It's your destiny. What other
heartbreak? Get used to it.
What other heartbreak in your teenage years specifically?
I probably won't go into it right now, if it's okay with you, Joe.
It's a family show.
Breaker than heartbroken.
Oh, I'm sure. Listen, 53106, if Nathan Murphy broke your heart.
Good God.
This is a radio slot I can get on board with. Conor Murray.
Yeah, Munster say the scrum half is progressing well from a thigh problem. He sustained that injury in the province's Pro 14 semi-final defeat to Leinster earlier this month. Andrew Conway, Munster say, is edging closer to a return, while Jean Klein and Dan Goggin will resume training this week. They've got a fixture against Connacht A coming up very shortly indeed.
Richie, does any word come in on Joey Carberry when you get these dispatches?
Yes, it does. Joey Carberry is usually posted towards the bottom of it. I don't think he one, but he has in previous ones where it just says, along with the long-term absentees, that they're continuing their rehab program. And to be honest with you, that's the same for any province and any player who is out for a long term. It doesn't give you a sense of when they'll be back training until it's probably the week before they're due back in the training pitch in any meaningful sense. And that, as I say, that's like an Irish rugby wide thing. It's not Munster or Joey Carberry specific.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. So, sorry, Nathan?
Did you ask Richie that because you said a tie problem and it just got into your head, Joey Carberry?
No. It jumped into my head given the conversations we've been having about Irish rugby, and we're coming into the international period now, 2 Six Nations games, the November internationals. You're kind of looking to Joey Carberry, who's getting more important by the week, really. So And just like, what's going on?
Well, nobody knows. Like, there doesn't seem to be any real expectation that he'll be back this season.
No.
But again, nobody knows.
No.
Maybe that's how they want to play it, and he just returns. You find out.
They're better off that way at this stage. Like, they're better off at this stage, just not saying nothing until he's pretty much sure of a return, because like the questions will start ramping up. Like Van Graan's going to obviously face those questions in Zoom press conferences or real ones. It's like, oh, we've noticed we haven't heard anything from Joey Carby in the last 6 months. When are we going to hear something? Like that will start at some point. But I think the longer months are saying nothing, it just gives him more space to recover.
Yeah, it's all very worrying. You'd wish him well, that's for sure. Hopefully we see him back soon. The Donegal, so there was a COVID situation in Donegal. What's the story here? Is this county final?
Yeah, Sunday's Donegal county football final meeting of Kilcar and Naomh Conaill has been postponed. It's after a member of the Kilcar panel tested positive for COVID-19. The club say other players are also awaiting test results. The final now has been put back to the evening of Wednesday, October 7th, as a result of all of that.
Okay. So we have news of Bernard Laporte. He's been in custody.
Yeah, Bernard Laporte, the French rugby president, claims he is the subject of a coup. He was held in custody today as part of investigations of alleged undue favouritism shown to the Montpellier owner Mohamed Altrad. Altrad is also being questioned along with French Rugby Federation Vice President Serge Simon, the FFR's International Relations Executive Nicolas Urquet, and Claude Atcher, the Director General of the 2023 Rugby World Cup Organising Committee. The investigation centres around alleged pressure put on the French League's Appeals Committee, which saw a Montpellier punishment reduced in 2017. Shortly thereafter, Altrad were named as the French national team shirt sponsors, company offering financial support to the successful Rugby World Cup bid. The questioning comes 10 days before Laporte is due to go up for re-election, and he denies any wrongdoing.
Dear, oh dear. Let's go from the ridiculous to the sublime. Text in from Denny. I can only imagine the affairs of the heart that were settled out the back of Nathan's meatpacking factory in Ballyhonus.
There weren't too many women working in the meatpacking factory, I can assure you. It was Midas nightclub.
Never have I seen a more nailed on JP made up that text.
Yeah.
All right, where are we going next?
We'll stay with matters legal in France. Swiss prosecutors are recommending that PSG President Nasser Al-Khelaifi is sentenced to 28 months in prison. They've also recommended that former FIFA Secretary General Jerome Valcke serve a 3-year sentence. The case centres around alleged corruption regarding the awarding of broadcast rights for the 2026 and 2030 World Cups to the Al-Khelaifi-run beIN Sports. The defence are due to begin giving evidence tomorrow in that case.
And Rich, very finally, James McLean, Celtic links.
Possibly, yes. Stoke manager Michael O'Neill has poured cold water on an imminent move for James McLean to Celtic. The Republic of Ireland winger has been linked with the move to the Scottish champions, who recently signed his fellow Derryman Shane Duffy. O'Neill says there has been no approach yet.
I think that's probably just a rumour that has been created by someone, whether that is certainly not come from our end. James isn't a player that equally that we're looking to lose at this minute in time. But I think, the nature of the transfer window is that I think you have to be flexible, and if any situation arises with any player, you have to give it consideration, particularly where we are at this minute in time. We have to obviously deal with the rules of financial fair play. We have to deal with a squad which is bloated. So I don't think, James is no different from any other player in the squad, that if a situation arose, then we have to consider it. But at this minute in time, I think that would be highly unlikely.
Okay, highly unlikely, but didn't kind of shoot it down as impossible either. Nathan, that's an interesting potential move. Like, you could see McLean wreaking havoc up there, doing very well, winning a couple of medals, full houses. You really kind of revitalising. Now, he was player of the season last year, so it's not like his form is down. But, exciting move. Probably a lifelong dream for McLean.
Absolutely for James McLean, a lifetime dream. And alongside Shane Duffy, two Derry men at the heart of 10 in a row.
Yeah, so all of that's good. On the other hand, man, in a Neil Lennon-esque way, he would be a lightning rod. I mean, geez, it would be an intense time as well.
Yeah, it may suit everybody that there's no crowds for the old firm for the next little while. But, geez, at the same time, you'd love to see it, and he would relish it. Absolutely relish it.
Well, we'll see what happens.
God knows what would happen.
One final line before I go, Joe. Cullum Kavanagh, I'm just seeing there as well. It's just gone up on the OTB Sports app and the site. The Toronto footballer Cullum Kavanagh announcing his inter-county retirement. So you can check out more of that on the website.
Okay, he had quite the career. I'm sure we'll catch up with him in the next couple of days. He can enjoy his retirement. 3 All-Ireland medals, was he? No, he wouldn't have been there in 03, was he?
No, I think he was there. He was there in 08.
He was definitely there 08.
Would have been.
08.
I don't think he was there in 05. I think he was just there in 08.
Right, okay. Yeah, I guess that would be an extraordinarily long career if he was there in 03. But still, brilliant player, brilliant career. We'll chat to him in the coming days. Nathan Murphy, thanks very much.
Cheers, Joe.
Richie McCormack, excuse me, as ever,
What?
Thank you. McCormack.
Thanks, Dave.
Richie McCormack, thank you. And we've got Paul McGinley coming up next.
The Newsround on Off the Ball.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
Come home to ultra-fast broadband and Sky's best ever Wi-Fi